Hola Madre, this is welcome back to another episode of Let's Be Real podcast. A very special episode, I must stress, because we have none other than Samuel Marsden in the building. Sam, take it away. Feel free to just let the people know what you do and how actually you have came into the world of journalism and yeah, just a brief introduction of how you actually got there and what actually drives you to be so consistent in the world of journalism.
Hello, guys. Very kind with your intro. I don't know if it's that special, but thanks for inviting me on ahead of a really exciting match this week. Tomorrow, Wednesday. It's already upon us. The international break's gone quite quick this time. I'm a journalist in Barcelona, pretty much exclusively covering Barca now. I know this is Madrid, but I'm sure you'll all understand how crazy Barcelona is. It doesn't give me much time to do much else. Occasionally I do some Madrid stuff, some Champions League stuff or whatnot. Used to do a lot more of all of Spain, but yeah, just with the absolute madhouse that Barcelona is, I'm pretty much exclusively focused on Barcelona, little bits and pieces of other things now and again, whether it's other Spanish football or, for example, the Women's World Cup later this year. We'll be heading out to New Zealand, so little things like that. But yeah, I've been in Barcelona, been in Spain for a decade now, studied journalism, came out here primarily to learn the language. I started learning a little bit in England, but didn't know Spanish that well, so I came out here to learn some Spanish. Ended up picking up bits of Catalan and stuff as well more recently with the birth of my daughter, given that she's speaking Catalan at school, to make sure that she can't
Catalan
get
is impressive, Sam. It's a very difficult language, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. If you have Spanish, you can get the basics of Catalan. I mean, I'm nowhere near an expert. I'm just starting to understand it. I try not to speak it too much in public. Just at sort of at a Duolingo level, and the level where I can understand my daughter, so she can't take the mick out of me with her friends.
Fair play for being honest, Sam. Not many people can do that.
But yeah, and I've just been freelancing and working in Spain as a sports journalist for almost a decade now, for starting with Bleacher Report, The Mirror, Goal, but mainly with Diario Sport, a newspaper here in Barcelona, and then with ESPN now for 6 or 7 years, which, if people don't know, is a network, website, TV, online in the United States, well, everywhere really, South America, Latin America, US, Netherlands now as well, all sorts of countries.
It's actually surreal because I still remember growing up reading up articles by Graham Hunter and the likes, and then I've seen Samuel Marsden as well. So to actually have you on the podcast is pretty mind blowing. I'll tell you, to be honest, because I was a 15-year-old reading up your articles, and now it is really an honor to actually have you on. But let's quickly welcome the panel. Usual suspects, Farouk and Jacob. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, really man, awesome, it's as you said, man. It's good, man. I mean, having Sammy, I think, at least for us, doing this for, I think it's been a year and a couple of months now. And honestly, having Sam actually, just justifies everything that we've been doing, honestly. So I just want to take this time out to, just say thank you to Sam, and actually for honoring our wishes. And as soon as I said, it's a dream come true, honestly.
Jacob.
Exactly. Even for me, I'm too good. I was just trying to pinch myself just to see how real this was. But it is really nice having you over here, Sam.
Right. Let's get into business because Sam doesn't have much time. He said, Sam, let's just kick off our conversation just to ease in. Let's have a very quick rapid fire. It'll be pretty simple, I guess, by your standards at least. Favorite food, Sam?
Favorite what? Sorry.
Favorite food.
Favorite food.
Comfort food. Yeah. Favorite food. Comfort food.
It's a difficult question. I think it changes. Doesn't it? It changes depending on the season. At the moment, I'll go for at the moment, I'm hankering for a good pad Thai, so Thai food. But
Thai food.
It changes, so I'll go for Thai at the moment.
Nice.
I mean, pasta and pizza are classics, aren't they, from Italy? And there's good Mexican food, good Spanish food. But yeah, I'll go for Thai. That's one of my favorites at the moment.
Right. Nice. Favorite movie or TV show?
Oof. I guess if I have to go movie or TV shows, is The Office.
It's The Office.
The UK one was
yeah.
the one that I grew up with and was like absolutely massive. But I also love the American one. I loved all those sort of, those mockumentary styles, Parks and Recreation, The Office. But yeah, the UK Office was the one that got me hooked. So I have to say that probably.
I haven't watched the UK one. I need to actually get it done, hopefully soon. Another one, Cruz, Xavi, or Guardiola. Who do you pick in their prime?
Oof. Difficult question. I'll probably go Xavi. I don't remember. I'm a little bit too young to remember Guardiola as a player in terms of being actually watching him. So I'm relying on sort of archive footage. Cruz and Xavi is a tough one. Obviously, they both had so much success for club and country. But I just think Xavi kind of became that Barcelona team sort of created a stereotype of midfielder that teams really wanted. It felt like a real sort of, I know there had been Barcelona midfielders before, like you say, Guardiola and whatnot, but it felt like they really created sort of, in that moment, a prototype of midfielder that other clubs or other teams or youngsters wanted to be, perhaps more than Toni Kroos has, despite his ridiculous success with club and country.
Just because you mentioned that, I would like to stress about this question here, because I've been listening to your podcast for a while and I've seen you on various platforms, majorly ESPN, Sam. Are you an actual Barcelona fan, or is the correspondence you do for Barcelona part of your job?
No, not a Barcelona fan. My team is Burnley in England, who couldn't be. Well, actually, under Vincent Kompany, they're actually playing a lot more attractive football. Right. I was going to say it couldn't be further from Barcelona, but no, they're not. They're probably playing better than Barcelona at some points this season. Some of the football they're playing in the Kompany. Yep. No, I've tried in the past, and I know lots of people have lots of teams. And when I've been in places, I've gone to games or tried to support clubs, whether it's a local club here like Europa, or different things. But I just find that you can't recreate that passion for your club. So it's just Burnley for me and no one else. I mean, obviously there are moments when I kind of perhaps lean towards Barcelona doing well, because if Barcelona go far in the Champions League, I get to go to Champions League finals. So obviously it's better for me. If they don't go far, it's more likely that the other correspondents will go. Right. And also you maybe sort of I wouldn't say support, but you kind of obviously you get to meet players or sort of develop relationships with players or their entourages, so you perhaps want things to go well for them.
Fair play. Burnley. I knew the answer, but I just wanted you to actually say it. But would you say that prime Chris Wood is greater than Luis Suarez, or is it the other way around?
No. Luis Suarez is miles better than Chris Wood.
Fair play. Best player while growing up, Sam. I mean, your favorite player while growing up.
Good question, because obviously a lot of them would be low-key Burnley players that no one's ever heard of. The first, when I was a kid, I went on holiday. It makes no sense because I was on holiday in the Canaries, which are obviously part of Spain, down those islands just off the coast of Africa. But when I was there, I was fascinated. I was addicted to, my favorite player was Alessandro Del Piero, and I got a Juventus Del Piero shirt. That was sort of the first non-sort of Burnley player or shirt I had, I guess, or say Del Piero.
Fantastic player in his prime, could do everything, literally everything you could ask from an attacking midfielder or a attacking player. Iniesta, Modric, or Zidane in their prime? Final one.
Oof. That's the Xavi one was quite an easy one for me to get to, quite an easy one for me to reason with. I mean, this one is really, really difficult. Iniesta. I'll just go Zidane.
Wow.
I don't know. I think Zidane at the time. I don't know with the those. I know Iniesta also scored a winning goal in the World Cup final. I know Luka Modric took Croatia to a World Cup final. I don't know. Probably it was part of being younger as well, so it's seeming more magical.
There was something really mystical about Zidane, right? Probably maybe because he retired early and stuff like that.
I think I like players that have a bit of bite as well. He wasn't just,
Yeah, he was nasty when he wanted to, Zidane, for sure.
And obviously, his contributions to that success with France in 98, to, Juventus, Madrid, just the absolute silk that he had. I don't know, but I would probably, he just felt like a magical player growing up, didn't he? And whereas Iniesta, also magical, Modric in their own way, but maybe because I was older, I didn't appreciate. Well, I appreciate both of them, but maybe not quite in the same way as you do when you're, a child.
Fair play. That's a brilliant response, honestly. I was expecting you to say Iniesta, but Fair play, Sam. Let's quickly get into some of the work-related questions that we would like to ask you. I don't know how personal this would be and how okay you would be to actually answer this, but as a Barca correspondent, Sam, what does that entail? Like, how much access do you get to the internal runnings of the club? Is it just from press releases or?
Depends what you mean by access. I mean, there are different levels. Whether you mean in terms of information on, stuff that's
Like
going behind the scenes or transfers, or whether you mean access in terms of interviews or with players or whatnot.
A bit of both. Like, have actually Barca players or managing staff ever opened up to you outside of interviews or like reached out to you for certain stuff?
In terms of players and managers, in terms of direct contact with them, we don't speak with them directly. Whether if perhaps interviews every now and again with ESPN, we have the rights in various countries, including in the US now. So that means we have media days before big games. We have, flash after the game where we speak to, usually the same players for English, whether it's Koundé, Ter Stegen, Lewandowski. So you kind of build a relationship with them that way, but not to an extent where you're necessarily talking to them. Well, I'm obviously speaking very personally. There might be people that have very different experiences, especially perhaps local journalists with some of the local players, in terms of, players that have covered La Masia in the academy, and then these players come through like Sergi Roberto or Busquets or whatnot, and they have stronger links perhaps with local journalists. But as an international journalist, I kind of have more of a relationship, not so much with the players, but with, the entourages, as they say, the camps or the media people or the agents related to, perhaps, Ter Stegen, De Jong, these sorts of guys who come here, and even though they're not English, their primary language when they arrive here is English. They're more aware of the international media. They're more sort of in touch with us. So that's where that access comes from them. And then it depends. Then it varies from player to player. There are some players that have people such as Ousmane Dembele or Pedri who have quite good sort of teams in terms of if there's an injury,
right,
you can reach out and they can sort of confirm things. Whereas Barca at the moment aren't really giving much in terms of injury time. Players are out and they give their side of events, and then there are other players that maybe you don't have any sort of things with. It just on a case-to-case basis, really. So I'd probably say there's different sort of levels of maybe 3 or 4 players. I'd say sort of, I guess the word they use in Spain is controlled. So you sort of have quite good access to information from them on. Maybe another 3 or 4 where not necessarily I'm getting stuff first, but they will confirm stuff for me if there's a story and I say, look, is this story true? They say yes, or they say no, ignore that, or whatnot. And then maybe a few others that perhaps I don't have such strong relationships with. And then in terms of the interviews and stuff, like I say, that comes through the rights holders. And then much more stuff. I mean, Barca have got such a big sort of database of staff. So you've got all the media team, but beyond then you've got everyone on the board. I mean, if you think of Real Madrid, Florentino Perez kind of oversees everything, and you don't really hear much from the the vice presidents or the directors.
It's watertight at Real Madrid compared to
maybe
Barcelona.
bits from Butragueño or whatnot every now and again at a draw or whatnot. Whereas at Barcelona, you've got so many people with their fingers in the pie. Even though Laporta is very presidential, very much at the top of the pyramid. You've got Rafa Just, you've got Matteo Alemán, you've got Jordi Cruyff, you've got other people speaking all the time, making comments, whether intentionally or unintentionally. And these people are obviously speaking off the record as well with local journalists, international journalists, giving stories, confirming stories. So with Barcelona, and I can compare with Real Madrid because I've worked a little bit around Real Madrid, but not so much. But also obviously within the English language press, we speak about perhaps access or ways to sort of contact people at certain clubs, and there is a general feeling that. And this isn't necessarily a good thing that Barcelona are more open, that Barcelona are more open or easier to get sort of access or confirm things on. Whereas Real Madrid is very, very close and very, very difficult to get into, apart from perhaps, that inner circle with Perez, who they would have, whether it's a Marca or some of the radios or whatnot, or El Chiringuito.
Do you think that actually kind of aids the general atmosphere of like around the club and kind of avoid scandals or anything as such, Sam? Like,
I don't think so, because I mean, it's difficult. There are pros and cons. If you just look at it from a Barcelona point of view, it's great to have more access or feel like you have more access or more information or more knowledge. Sometimes I do think it becomes a problem that they're so willing to talk. Sometimes I think it's best just to not talk so much, and to the best PR would be to not speak, to not comment on things, and the story would sort of die or disappear. But that's just within the Barcelona sphere as well. There's press across the whole of Spain. who perhaps don't have so much influence in Barcelona, but do report things and whatnot. So you still get both sides of the coin. So I don't think it really matters too much.
Actually,
Fair
Sam, I
enough.
was wondering, like, how much does the language barrier come into play? Because as you said, like, you moved to Spain just to learn Spanish and something like that. So, and I mean, you're an English language journalist mostly. So, like, how much would you say, like, things get missed out? You know, I don't know, lost in translation or something like this, I would say. Like, do that happen quite often in your line of work? Or I don't know if I was able.
I don't think I think not for me, no, not for me, and not for the people on the ground here. I think the problem is for people. I mean, we live in, you know, a media sort of environment where anything that anyone says at Real Madrid or Barcelona will be on, you know, every English language newspaper within like an hour. And I think the problem is when you've got, you know, people being perhaps junior journalists or journalists who don't perhaps have a high level of Spanish being tasked with taking things from Sport or from Marca or from Spanish publications and being, oh, look what Modric has said, let's get this. And then perhaps you get translation or errors there, or perhaps with, you know, aggregators on Twitter who are so quick to try and get quotes out. There's perhaps you get little mistakes there. I mean, for me, there's not really been, I mean, I've been here 10 years now, so my level of Spanish is good. And most of my communication with, you know, people related to Barca is done in Spanish. I'd say that English has helped me, as I said before, in terms of breaking into I wouldn't say having a niche, but perhaps reaching out or having a better relationship with some of the foreign players, because they come over here, and even if the players are learning Spanish, a lot of their agents or whatnot only deal in English. So obviously, as a native English speaker, that is one area where I perhaps have I'm loath to call it a one up, but like I guess is a plus point on local journalists whose English is perhaps, well, is not native. It will be obviously varying levels. So yeah, I mean, in that sense, it's a pro and a con. I think obviously a lot of people, a lot of players like the idea of eventually going to the US. So the fact that I work for ESPN is often a plus for, you know, if I'm looking for information on Sergio Busquets' future, perhaps his agent is thinking, well, it's good to have stuff in ESPN, to have Busquets' name out there. It increases how true it's not, whether the fact, you know, maybe 60,000 people read the story if it's not that interesting in the US, but from their point of view, to have Busquets on ESPN in the US sort of increases his name, his branding or whatever ahead of potential move out there. So that's been a plus for me, I would say, as well. So yeah, it's pros and cons. In terms of the language confusion, I think it's more perhaps when you removed from journalists outside of Spain who are perhaps through no fault of their own, I'm sure it's being demanded by, you know, editors or whatnot, but being asked to cover things that perhaps they're not quite equipped to translate, and sometimes it's just little translation things in terms of sayings that don't translate literally or whatnot. Little quirks that perhaps seem like one thing but are another thing.
Oh, I do have a follow-up question also. So when a lot of these clubs, they work with their own Spanish mouthpieces, right? And publications. So do you feel like a lot of that information doesn't come to something as big as ESPN? And how do clubs choose to operate on just by spreading, let's say, rumors?
In what sense? Can you just say that again, please? Sorry, I just missed the first bit.
Oh, yeah, sure. So these clubs, they often release a bunch of rumors via Spanish publications instead of going to something as big as maybe ESPN. Like, why do you think that is, that we see a lot of that, especially in Spain?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess because, you know, I mean, we've seen the curious thing, you know, could never imagine a coach in the Premier League, and maybe I'm wrong, saying before the start of a season, we need everyone on board. We need the players, we need the supporters, we need the club, and we need the media, which is what Xavi said at the start of this season. So you can kind of see the workings of the relationship between the Barcelona newspapers and Barcelona, and the Madrid newspapers and Madrid. So I guess they have a relationship where they need to keep the club on board. So if the club perhaps want them to publish something, they're more willing to do it. B, they publish so much, they publish everything on the clubs because they have to, because that's their main thing. At ESPN, even if they did come to us, we perhaps have a little bit of a higher bar in terms of what we would publish. We would want to, if Barcelona came to us and said, or if, you know, or to my colleague Moises Llorens, who gets a lot of stuff from sources at Barca, if he had a source close to Barca or within Barca, and Barca trying to put a story out, you know, we want to sell player X is attracting interest from the Premier League. Do you want to do the story? We wouldn't just do the story. We would then have to, you know, perhaps approach I would perhaps have a relationship with the player's agent maybe and say, have you heard any of this, and correspond from that side. Perhaps if the Premier League, if they were saying Chelsea are, you know, making a bid, we'd go to, perhaps we've got a guy called James Ollie in London, and we'd say to him, Barca are pushing this story that Chelsea want to sign player X. Have you heard anything? Could it be true? And then we make a decision from there, because if it's just Barca saying it, it's obviously in Barca's interest perhaps to get this out that Chelsea are interested in to perhaps fuel interest from other clubs or certain bids and whatnot. So we have a bit of a higher bar. So they didn't really come to us with stuff like that I know of. Maybe Moises speaks about things, and there are things sometimes that come up that we don't do. It's about making a judgment call, really, and a lot of the time we wouldn't do it. The only time we sometimes run into problems, or not problems, but we're forced to rush a little bit, is perhaps on sort of deadline days and things like that if it's transfer related, because you might be hearing things and things can change so quickly and you can miss out on things so quickly. You don't have as much time to make the right call, and maybe it's difficult to, I'm sure agents have got 15,000 more priorities to be responding to journalists about transfer rumors on deadline day, depending on the strength of the relationship. So sometimes you have to make a call based on perhaps less information on those sort of deadline day or the day before, when things are moving so fast and you don't want to be beaten to a news story perhaps.
Absolutely. That completely makes sense and kind of puts it into perspective how crazy deadline days can be, and how some of the information can be, very, very distant from the truth. But one final question related to the press stuff. Is the language barrier, Sam, like kind of limit the level of La Liga's reach in the global market, like compared to the Premier League? Is the language barrier a genuine barricade in getting that extra amount of reach and basically widespread recognition compared to the Premier League?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I don't have the complete answer. I can only offer my opinion. I mean, obviously, Spanish is also a massive language, so it's obviously a benefit, perhaps in terms of the Latin American, South American market. Right. I think the strong point, I guess, for the Premier League is that English is so widely sort of a second language, or there's probably, I don't know this for sure, but I think there's more native Spanish speakers than native English speakers. I don't know if I've made
for sure. Yeah, I think that is a genuine stat. Yeah,
but yeah, there are people who would consume news on Barcelona and Real Madrid in English. So if you think about that, there's obviously, it's much more accessible, the news, the coverage, videos, YouTube channels, podcasts, whatever, in English on the Premier League. So I think that must, in my opinion, it must be a factor. I don't know if anyone's ever done a study on it, or there's any sort of data which explains that, aside from all the other reasons, the rights deals and stuff, how much of a consequence of that in the Premier League is down to the language. Yeah, it's a good question, and I think it's definitely a factor. I mean, Spain obviously has a boost, I guess, over the Bundesliga and other leagues because of that sort of connection that it has to South America, which is a big market. But yeah, I mean, sport and the newspapers here and stuff are crazy for the English speaking market in terms of sponsors and stuff. They say it's worth much more than the Spanish speaking markets. Yeah, so it's definitely a factor among several.
Completely makes sense. Would take this opportunity to actually shout out the people in the chat. Dennis is back again. He says, "Vamos a la Madrid." My heart says 3-1. My head says 1-1. Interesting. Adriano is actually back again. Nice to see you again. He says, "Hey Sam, I'm also from Barcelona. I live in Barcelona too." Dennis the Great says, "Zizou made me a Real Madrid fan. As a kid, my uncle gave me a Zidane jersey." That's one way to actually get into supporting the game, and one of the absolute greats to actually it's a great pitch. I'll tell you that. But let's kind of segue into the current scene in La Liga, and how Barcelona has made a tremendous resurgence from their very poor couple of campaigns, the previous 2 years. Sam, can you actually enlighten us how Xavi has kind of turned this around? When we actually previewed the first Clasico back in October, we had a specific topic that we actually addressed: Xavi's revolution against Carlos' evolution. Do you think that makes sense?
In what sense?
In the sense that Carlo basically took up an evolution of older heads and seasoned veterans who actually had won so much, and then blending them with youngsters, whereas Xavi actually kind of uh, ripped up the whole method book and kind of started afresh.
Yeah, I think there's an element of that. Obviously, you guys will know as better than me about how Ancelotti's affected Madrid. I think he's obviously, I don't know if he gets enough credit for how much sort of Vinicius has come on under him. If we think back to Vinicius under Zidane, obviously had all that potential, but perhaps not the consistency. I think Xavi's probably a mix of revolution and evolution. If you think, I know Jordi Alba's dropped out now, but very important to Barca's recovery last season was still Ter Stegen, Piqué, Alba, Busquets. They were all still very much, and they've sort of, I guess, been phased out gradually. First, obviously, Piqué.
But they have been completely out of the team this season,
Well, there's still, but I mean, there's still Ter Stegen, Busquets, De Jong, who are still sort of staples of the team before Xavi came in. Yeah, I mean, I guess there is an element of revolution, especially when you look back to last summer. I think the main thing that Xavi has done, and I think Ancelotti's commented on this, I think when we spoke to Ancelotti in the Camp Nou press room after the 2-1 just before the international break, he was asked why Barca 12 points clear, and he said consistency, which is basically, I think, what it comes down to. And I think Barca have been so consistent, perhaps for 2 or 3 reasons. Obviously, well, the first reason, obviously, they have improved under Xavi in terms of signing players and playing better football, having goals. Obviously Lewandowski's been a big signing. Dembele for the first half of the season in certain games has been good. But obviously, I mean, the most dramatic improvement has been in defence, which is obviously down to signings in terms of Koundé and Christensen, but also the emergence of Alejandro Balde as a real sort of starter, and then Araujo mainly staying fit. I think the stats are a little bit misleading. I mean, Madrid have obviously scored against them in 3 of the 4 games they've played this season, including 3 in the Bernabeu. They've obviously conceded a lot in the Champions League, and they conceded 4 in the Europa League against United. So it's still not this watertight defense that perhaps the La Liga statistics would suggest.
It's basically Ter Stegen playing out of his skin, right, for majority of the season.
There's a combination of things. I mean, Ter Stegen has been very good. He's been a return to form, which has been a massive boost because he's had a lot of criticism in recent seasons. There are people that thought he was never going to get back to this level. So that's one of the major factors. I mean, it is also true that they are much better in defence. So how could they not be with Koundé, Christensen, and Araujo? They have Araujo and Koundé to a degree, and Christensen is also not slow. They have more recovery pace, whereas before they would get caught out the way they play so high all the time, whereas now they can sort of afford to. There have been so many times when Araujo uses his pace to get back or is in the right place at the right time. I'm thinking in those latter stages of the 1-0 win at Atletico Madrid and games like that. So that's been the major thing that Xavi's done, really, is improve the defence. Because even if we say they're slightly overperforming their statistics in defence and perhaps could have conceded a few more, it's still a dramatic improvement to what it was when Xavi took charge. And that's what's allowed them to be so consistent and to, basically to not, I know they lost to Almeria recently, but basically the main difference between them and Madrid is they've been, in general, so switched on or able to win games in different ways against everyone that's not, well, they've also beat Real Madrid twice, but to be so consistent elsewhere. No, but obviously they lost to Madrid in the league, but to be so consistent in general. And I don't know how much of that comes down to hunger as well.
I think it has largely to do with hunger and basically being deprived of success for a bit. If we actually go back to the first leg, Sam, they actually did a number on us, which was very eerily similar to how we kind of navigated the knockout phases of the Champions League last year, being very compact and being dogged in their defense. Would you class that as some sort of a change or a different turn in philosophy from Xavi? Because Barcelona isn't a team that is expected to defend like that, especially in a Clasico.
Yeah, that was an incredible game because obviously Barca won it 1-0, but it fueled such a sort of, I mean, Xavi called it criticism, but at very least debate, at most criticism, I guess, of, the Barca style. And I think it came down to 2 things. I think the first thing is, yes, Barca were trying to be a little bit more solid, perhaps a little bit more defensive than perhaps they would have done because of the personnel. They obviously had a lot of players missing. They were sort of forced to perhaps play that way. I can't remember off the top of my head who wasn't playing now, but there was no Pedri, no Dembele, no Lewandowski. Christensen was on the bench, so they were sort of forced to be, if not set up that way, be prepared to play that way. And then, as Javi said, Madrid were at home. Madrid sort of were able to take the game to Barca. Two teams play, and it was obviously difficult for Barca to get out. I think they wanted to have more of the ball. I think they wanted to control the ball more, but they were just unable to do it. And I think it's not a bad thing if, when they're unable to do it, they are able to then have a structure that allows them to defend well and keep clean sheets, because they've not had that for a long time. But overall, I think it's not. I don't think they're straying as far from. I think there's a lot of stuff said, isn't there, about the style and the way Barca played and whatnot. But the modern game changes a lot. Barca is still a team that want to attack. They're still a team that wants to have the ball. But yeah, the fact that they had 35% of possession at the Bernabeu didn't go down too well here. But I think it was an anomaly for the reasons we've spoken about, with the players missing and the fact that Madrid are a very good team and they were playing at home.
Fair point. So I was actually listening to your podcast. By the way, it's actually linked in the description. People, like, if you haven't checked that out already, do check out Sam's Barcelona podcast, Siempre, Positivo, in which he actually was talking with Rick Sharma and Tony, and you guys were actually mentioning that going by the current mini crisis of injuries that Barcelona are having, Real Madrid has like more than 50% of a chance to actually nick the game tomorrow. Like, can you actually flesh out why you guys exactly think that? Because like, we have lost the last 3 Clásicos, and the morale has never been this kind of low, especially approaching a Clásico in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I can't remember. Is this was on this week's pod? I can't remember if it was winning the tie. I know winning the game would obviously take it to extra time. But yeah, I mean, I think for the game, Javi said as much today. Barca are without Christensen, they're without Frenkie de Jong, they're without Pedri, they're without Dembele. Obviously, they've won the last 3, but like Javi also says, how long do these runs go on for? This is the first time they've won 3 in a row since the Guardiola era. On statistics, are they likely to make it 4 in a row? Real Madrid are obviously wounded by the fact they've lost 3 in a row. The Copa del Rey, a chance to make the final feels. I mean, the Copa del Rey in its own can be valued or not by these 2 clubs at the end of the season, but knocking the other one out of it on the way to the final is obviously almost as big as then winning it.
It is a psychological blow for sure.
Yeah. So, and Madrid have obviously, in that game before the break, I know Barca said they deserved to win it. Actually, Madrid were well on top when Barca got the winner. They were pushing. They had the offside goal. They had some chances. It could have gone either way. Perhaps a draw would have been a fair result. But I think, either a draw or a Real Madrid win is probably. I don't know. I mean, my predictions with Clásicos always go wrong. Whenever the team looks stronger, it seems to go the other way. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the sensation I have. I'm always like, Madrid are coming into this one much stronger. It's going to be a Madrid win, or this is, it's got Barca written all over it. And there was a run where, Barca were better than Madrid, but they would never beat them at Camp Nou and little things like that. Yeah, I mean, I just think, I know Barca also scored 4 at the weekend, but Lewandowski has not been in great form since the World Cup. Rafinha has been quite good, but he doesn't feel quite like the threat of Dembele. He works harder, and he's had obviously great output in the last sort of 3 months. He scored some important goals, some winning goals, but I don't feel like maybe he will prove me wrong, and maybe it will come this way in time, but I don't feel like he's necessarily a player you go into the big games thinking Rafinha is definitely going to be the difference maker here. So I think Barca.
But he has actually managed to surprise me, because I had zero expectations of Rafinha when he actually came in, because I didn't rate him as a player at Leeds United. He was good, but he wasn't a Barcelona quality player, in my humble opinion. But he has been actually pretty decent for Barcelona.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he had a really good game in that Clasico, actually, just before the break. I know he didn't score either of the goals, but I thought he was perhaps Barca's best player in that game. I think it was the best I've seen him play. So he has sort of stepped up especially since Dembele's been out. There's that whole problem that Barca have basically got 3 right wingers, Ferran, Rafinha, and Ousmane Dembele. So the squad planning's been bad there, because all 3 of them, even though Ferran can play across the front 3, Dembele and Rafinha can play on either flank, all 3 of them will tell you what's your preferred position. They will all say, I want to play on the right wing. So that's not good squad planning. But yeah, with the sort of, I guess it settled him down a bit, knowing that he's got that right wing spot for a while with Dembele been out, and he has been quite good. But I would still put, in terms of influencing matches, you'd still sort of think Vinicius in the final third will offer more than him, even if Rafinha offers a lot defensively as well, and perhaps overall in terms of what you want from a player, it might be a bit closer. But you'd still rather take Vinicius in the final third in terms of what he's able to do. I guess Benzema's been, even though his numbers have been good since the World Cup, I guess there's an element of the Lewandowski about him too, whereas maybe before the weekend, I know he'd only scored 1 in 5, and maybe Madrid fans would have said he's perhaps not quite been in top form, but with the hat trick, he comes into this one in good form. I always think that Rodrigo is underused at Madrid in these games as well. He's brilliant at the weekend as well. I mean, there's the massive caveat at the weekend. I don't know what you guys thought, but Elche and Valladolid both defended so badly.
So poorly.
You don't want to get too carried away about Ansu Fati's goal or Benzema's hat trick, but
Lewandowski's ball for the Ansu Fati goal was insane from the middle of the pitch.
Yeah, the Ferran Torres goal, the long ball.
Oh yeah, the Ferran Torres goal. My bad. It wasn't the Ansu Fati goal.
So I mean, I guess it's good that they had those big wins at the weekend, because both teams should go into Wednesday's game with a little bit of confidence. The strikers are in good nick. There's not, I guess as they say, it's sort of a weight lifted off their shoulders that they've scored those goals there. Hopefully it will set up a good game. But yeah, I just think with the injuries, with Madrid losing the last 3, I feel like the scales are slightly tipped in Madrid's favor. But it's a really, really close Clasico. I think this season, these last few have been difficult. I mean, before the first leg, I thought Madrid would definitely win that one. I thought the La Liga one would probably be a draw. I think tomorrow could easily be a draw as well. I think, because it's only 1 goal in there, I think we could see extra time. I think Madrid could win, but I think we could see extra time.
Wait, Sam, you said that you always get predictions wrong. Can you predict that Barcelona are going to win?
Actually, Sam, I was wondering, based on what you said it's an anomaly that happened in the first leg. Barca have less position, what is and what is not. What I'm just thinking now is based on what you're saying about the lack of players and what is and what is not, form of some players being are we going to be expecting to see Barca play the same style constrained like that across the 2 legs in the last 2 games? The first leg and the game before the international break. Real Madrid had just 2 targets across.
Wait, is it just me or it's like Farouk breaking
up? Farouk's voice is kind of breaking off. Farouk, can you just unmute and mute and unmute and maybe try it again?
No.
No, it's still kind of distorted. But yeah, quickly, because Sam doesn't have much time. Adriana was in the comments. She was asking actually a very good question. Taking into consideration that Pedri and De Jong are out, do you expect Xavi to take a similar approach to the first leg? Who do you think will replace them in the 11, Sam?
Yeah, well, I'm fairly, again, going with predictions, I'll probably be wrong, but I'm fairly sure that Xavi will go Ter Stegen, Araujo, Koundé, Marcos Alonso, Balde, Busquets, Sergio Roberto, Kessie, Gavi, Rafinha, Lewandowski. So it'll be that sort of that midfield 4, if you want to call it, or 4-3-3 with Xavi sort of on the left coming into midfield, and Kessie coming in, I guess, for Pedri in effect, if you're going on the sort of man for man, and Roberto in for De Jong in terms of perhaps a little bit deeper alongside Busquets is what I would imagine, although they can obviously swap Kessie and Roberto, but I'm fairly sure that will be the Barca 11. But even though they don't have Pedri and De Jong and Dembele, who are 3 players who make them tick, and also Christensen in terms of playing out from the back, he brings a lot to their style. I still think, I would be stunned if we saw Barca having 35% possession again. I think they'll have, I don't know, maybe shade the possession, maybe 55-40.
Right. I guess I have to completely agree with that, because people have been going on about Kessie not getting the recognition he deserves, especially since he scored the winner in the Liga Clasico. But we're going to be wrapping this up in 10 minutes. So people who want to actually get in a few questions, we would dedicate the last couple of minutes to send in your questions to Sam. But Sam, from a Real Madrid perspective, what has Ancelotti missed? What should Real Madrid do to actually win a Clasico now, which could be, a very season-defining moment for Ancelotti, who kind of looks like he's out of the door? And do you think personally that he might not be here come September?
If I had to bet, I think everything's pointing towards him staying until the end of the season and then taking the Brazil job. And I think everyone will be happy with that. I think Madrid will be happy to part ways after 2 years. I don't know if winning the Champions League and the Copa del Rey could change that or sort of change Madrid's opinion. And
you really think the Champions League isn't going to change Carlo's decision to stay or the club's decision to actually keep him?
I think it depends more on the club than Carlo. I think Carlo, Ancelotti said it a lot, hadn't he, that he would stay. I don't know if you get the impression. I don't know. You guys will know more than me and follow more than me. I get the impression that he will be the Brazil manager. But like I say, with the one caveat, if they win the Champions League, perhaps Perez will change his mind. But perhaps Florentino Perez is also someone who knows what he wants, and perhaps even if they do win the Champions League, perhaps he's seen enough this season to see that perhaps a change is needed because the trend in the league has been, although Madrid's points aren't actually much down on last year. The main difference is that Barcelona have been much more consistent, but perhaps a change is needed in terms of just football goes in cycles. You need, new faces, new hunger, the way that Guardiola left Barca when it was time. Whether a third year of Ancelotti after winning 2 Champions Leagues would bring a third, I don't know. I would bet on him being the Brazil manager after this season. In terms of the Clásicos, I think, it comes back to the Super Cup especially felt like hunger because it's obviously a minor competition, but it felt important for Barca in their growth, definitely more than Real Madrid in terms of they were off the back of a League and Champions League double last season, and perhaps they weren't quite sort of as motivated or out the blocks as Barca were. The Copa del Rey we've commented was an anomaly. Perhaps, Ancelotti could have done better in that game. I don't know if he can do much more. I think Madrid are struggling a little bit of fullbacks at the moment from my perspective. I think Carvajal's been an interesting one.
Yeah.
I kind of wrote him off maybe 18 months ago, and then I thought I was at the Chelsea. I can't remember if it was the Chelsea. I was at a couple of the Champions League games at the Bernabeu last year, and I thought he was fantastic.
He has his ability to actually rise to the occasion, right? He's a weird player.
But I've been disappointed with him in recent Clásicos, and obviously the left back situation needs resolving. Obviously Mendy, even when he is fit, is perhaps not always the preferred option.
I honestly think, Sam, when it comes to Carvajal, people were actually going off, especially in Spain, when they saw that Kieran Tierney was actually ripping him to shreds in the game against Scotland. But people forget that Kieran Tierney was actually clocked as the fastest player in the Premier League this season, and Carvajal was never known for his pace. So I don't understand that. We knew this all along, that Carvajal isn't the quickest. His main strengths were actually basically being a better defender than most fullbacks in the world. Is there a valid point for that? Maybe some of the criticism that he has been getting might be a bit over the top.
Off the back of a Spain game, I've been very underwhelmed by Luis de la Fuente's start, and I'm a massive Luis Enrique fan. So this is a whole different question. But I wouldn't judge any of those Spain players off the Spain game so far. But I do think, obviously you need to play to a player's strengths. I think Carvajal's perhaps been a little bit exposed as well in some games by, again, in the Clasico, depending on the setup that Madrid have had. And like you say, he is a player who, like I say, because I thought he'd kind of dipped from his best, and then he returned, I thought, in that Champions League run in some of the games last year. But then, it just seems to be creeping in again, perhaps not quite up to the level, whether it's to do with injuries finally taking their toll, or it's to do with, hunger or age or whatnot. But I think the fullback areas are 2 areas where Madrid are struggling. I don't know what Ancelotti could do. You guys will know who's best bet to play left back. I know they've obviously played Camavinga a bit there. Alaba's obviously back and can play there. I don't think Mendy will be back. I don't know, but I don't know what the best option would be. And obviously the left back role is quite important because Barca the way they have this midfield 4, they do have a right winger, which will be Rafinha. So you need someone who can deal with Rafinha, who obviously caused a lot of problems against Madrid in that game 2 weeks ago, just before the international break. But no, I think you will know as well, we'll probably get the same from Ancelotti. Xavi said today he doesn't expect Madrid to surprise him. He's obviously spoken about Modric and Kroos being untouchables. Even though that doesn't mean they're going to be untouchable in every game, I still think he will obviously go to them from the start tomorrow when it comes to it. But we'll see. You will know better than me. I think it's just been, each game has been so different. It's not like they've been followed the same pattern, and you can say, well, this keeps happening. Ancelotti's getting this wrong. Obviously, the first game was Barca did play very well, but then the second game was that Copa del Rey game when Madrid had all of the ball and didn't have any sort of success in the final third. And then I thought Madrid, I kind of agree with Ancelotti that in the league Clasico, Madrid were, I mean, they had deficiencies, like I say, the fullbacks, they lost their way at certain points, but they also were equal to Barca, especially, and they came on strong, I thought, in the last half an hour. And with those midfield changes, obviously got a lot of criticism for perhaps making them so late. But like you also said, if he made 5 changes after an hour or at half time, people are going to go, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, Sam, but
Facts.
so Carlo Ancelotti, he was addressing the fullback question in his press conference, right? I'm quoting him. It's true our left back doesn't attack a lot because there's Vinicius. Fullbacks don't always have to go out and attack. Do you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I actually, fullbacks aren't. I mean, the role of the fullback changes all the time, doesn't it? Based on how the formations or football is favoured at the time. If you go back to sort of 10 years, perhaps everyone wanted an attacking fullback. I actually quite like the balance of having one attacking fullback and one sort of more defensive fullback. If you think back to the Barca side of Guardiola, they had the Alves and the Abadal combination. And when Barca have, obviously, it's Araujo against Madrid, but with the Koundé, even though Koundé doesn't want to play right back, with Koundé and Balde, it kind of works quite well the way Barca play, because you get the width from the left back and you get the width from the right winger, and Koundé can sort of tuck in, and it allows for a little bit more flexibility tactically. You can switch to a back 3 quite easily and whatnot. So I quite like the balance of having one sort of attacking fullback and one defensive fullback. But yeah, Ancelotti's absolutely right. In fact, I actually remember, I think, was it the Champions League final that Ancelotti won in 2014, maybe, when, you know, the big, he changed the only changes he made when they were chasing the game against Atletico were the 2 fullbacks. I think he swapped the fullbacks around, and everyone was like,
Marcelo came in, yeah.
How's this going to affect everything? And those were the big changes that sort of swung the game in Madrid's favour.
Even Marcelo actually scored one of the most pivotal goals in the final as well. So yeah, that's a very good point, that we are actually quite forgotten about that. And people see, this is why I actually stress out to people like Farouk. You see here, Sam is one of Carlo's biggest critics. Like, people just have fickle memory. They seem to forget that he is actually a very astute tactician as well. Yes, it's not all about actually keeping the dressing room in good vibes. It's also actually game management and kind of tweaking the game on the go. And Carlo is, I think, the best manager to actually bring in all those facets together for a team like us to work, because not every manager can actually handle the pressure and the expectation that comes with this job, right, Sam?
Actually, Sam, before you answer that question, can you just end by, I was going to say to you, like you said, you see Carlo going to Brazil. Can you just end by also suggesting who you think is going to replace him while answering Sunay's question as well?
Oof, who could I was actually talking about with a friend about the Chelsea post, but there's some very, very good coaches available. Obviously, some will be more fitting to Chelsea or Madrid than others. But if you look at the coaching market at the moment, with Pochettino, Conte, Nagelsmann, Luis Enrique, who else is there? There's Zidane. Obviously, Zidane's already had his spells at Madrid, but who knows if he would come back again. So yeah, there's some really good free coaches about. I don't have any information. I've not really followed much about who Madrid would go for, whether they would finally go for Pochettino perhaps, or Nagelsmann if he doesn't take one of the jobs in England. Perhaps I'd say one of those two, just off the top of my head for now, Nagelsmann or Poch maybe. I don't know what you guys think or what you've heard.
I don't think Pochettino would be a good fit personally, but
I disagree, honestly. I think Poch is the right fit for us at this point in time, but then it is what it is, honestly.
Quickly, Sam, a couple of questions that some of our listeners actually posted in. Fento, if I'm not mistaken, he was asking, would Barcelona have preferred showing off a La Liga trophy or the Champions League at the Nou Camp, in your opinion, Sam?
Oof. The thing with Barcelona and Madrid is it always comes down to the other, what the other team does. Probably, I think teams generally prefer the Champions League, but I mean, after 4 years without La Liga, I mean, La Liga is just as good. I think they're almost equal this year, with the caveat that if it had to be one, or I don't know. I think Champions League probably, but I mean, it depends on the circumstances with Barcelona all the time and what that would mean for La Liga if they were humiliated in La Liga, it wouldn't have been good. The most important thing for Barca this season was being competitive in Europe, which they weren't, and being, you know, close to the title in La Liga, which they are going to win. It's kind of like a starting point. And yeah, but I mean, next season they have to. If they don't compete in Europe next season, there's going to be a big drama. If they're even in Europe.
Fair play. I think that's a very good answer. He also asks you, would he like to see Eric Garcia start over Busquets in midfield? I think it was experimented in the Elche game, and he was fairly praised for his performance.
No, I wouldn't like to. Wouldn't like to see him start against Madrid, and I don't think he will start in that position against Madrid. It's quite interesting, that thing, because it's been suggested quite a bit. In part because Eric Garcia is quite good on the ball, but in part because he's been sort of weak in sort of one-on-one duels in defence, that people have been looking for other areas where they could use his expertise. But the turnaround from Xavi has been quite interesting, because he's been asked about it quite a few times since he's been Barca manager, and he's always said, no, it's not something we're considering. And now all of a sudden he did it at the weekend against Elche, which was a nice test and went okay, but it was against an Elche team who were really bad in defence. But it's also interesting that Xavi said it wasn't his idea, it was Jordi Cruyff's idea. So that's interesting that he said the sporting director had told him to try that.
I remember people were actually kind of not so impressed with Eric Garcia's positional play, but his passing kind of bails him out a lot more, I think. One final question, Sam, from Adriana here. Was becoming a sports journalist always your dream job? If you could interview anyone within the football world, who would be your pick? Who would be your dream gig, basically?
It's a good question. I think, like a lot of people, it was not, well, I guess a lot of people don't maybe want to be a sports journalist, but they do sort of maybe go into football and then end up in sports journalism. For me, it was always sort of, it always went hand in hand, my passion for football. And I also really like sort of writing and studying English at school. And from a very early age, people pointed out that, maybe you'd quite like to go into sports journalism. So it's been, looking back, it was very sort of straightforward, and I'm very lucky and grateful for how everything worked out. But obviously it came on the back of being a rubbish footballer. Well, not rubbish, but nowhere near good enough to be a professional footballer. And in terms of who you would like to interview, is a good question. You always look for the characters, I guess. If it was dead or alive, I'd maybe say Diego Maradona, just because he was so sort of entertaining. In terms of people that are still alive, who would be a good person to talk to? Because a lot of the top people don't really speak too much, do they? In terms of I'm trying to think who's entertaining and who's a good talker and a good speaker.
Zlatan, maybe?
Zlatan would be quite good. It would be quite interesting. I think I'd be quite scared if I was interviewing Zlatan. I feel like he'd like tell me off for some questions or something. It'd be like, you'd be like, ridiculous, what you're talking about. I actually do think that with a lot of managers.
Sean Dyche, maybe?
Sean Dyche should be.
Yeah, that's a good shot. That's a good shot. Vincent Kompany is a good shot.
Yeah, I'll go Vincent Kompany for now. It's a very momentaneous shout, but yeah, Vincent Kompany, super Vincent.
Are you actually hopeful about Burnley staying up, like how Sean Dyche made them stay up for a while in the Premier League from next season?
It's the unknown. Obviously, we got smashed by Man City. I mean, the way we're playing at the moment and the way we've torn through the Championship gives hope when you look at sort of, I guess it's the idea is, or the aim is, when you look at Brighton or Brentford, and to replicate that sort of model of success. They play sort of quite front foot football. It's certainly not the way we played under Dyche, and that's the way we play at the moment. But yeah, I don't know. It's impossible to say. And I mean, once you get below the top six, anyone could go down. I mean, Brentford or Brighton could easily be in a relegation battle next season. One bad coaching appointment, one losing one player. I think the way we've played this season with Kompany, I think they would probably be all right in the first season. They would back in, but yeah, you never know beyond there. This has been the most enjoyable season, being in the Championship and beating everyone. It's great fun.
Top of the table as well, flying, absolutely flying. I think that's pretty much it, Sam. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and we hope that you felt the same as well.
No, yeah, I've enjoyed it. I'm going to get back to parenting.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sam. It's been fun, honestly. Thank you so much.
No worries. Cheers, guys. Enjoy the game tomorrow, and maybe speak again in the future.
See you, Sam.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Bye. Don't forget to actually smash the like on the video, and if you haven't subscribed, don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well. Don't forget to actually go follow Sam on Twitter. The link is in the description below. There's also the link to Sam's Barcelona podcast, Siempre Positivo. The link is also in the description below. We had so many questions from all of you guys. We could only squeeze in a few of them. Apologies for the ones that.
Oh, yeah. So I guess we lost Sunit. Like we said, we got a bunch of really nice questions. We had Dennis, of course, always there. Adriana in the comments as well. Who else was there? Yeah, it's just
Dennis
these two
is great.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dennis is great. We had a bunch of questions on Instagram. We had a few questions from the Real Madrid committee as well. So yeah, we tried to squeeze in everything, and I guess it was a really good show. I hope you guys enjoyed having Sam on board. What else, Farooq? Would you like to add anything for the Clasico?
Maybe we can just finish with our predictions and call it a day. Maybe.
Sure. Well, Sam had his predictions. He was probably winning telling Madrid would kind of win, or it's going to be a draw again, depending on how that goes. Like the rest of the Barcelona camp. What are you
Yeah,
saying?
actually, I'm expecting a more of a 2-1 victory, and I think that's gonna take us to extra time, right?
Sure. Yeah, there is no away goals thing or anything, right?
Yeah, I think there is no away goals. Yeah, it's just you win what you win.
Actually, I actually think we're not going to concede, Farooq. Like, I feel like this is finally the one Clasico that we don't concede.
Okay.
So I'm gonna predict a 1-0 win, and then we go and win it in penalties.
Oh, ballsy, man, ballsy. Okay, I mean penalty is a 50-50 always, so I will take my chances.
Cool.
Okay, then I guess with that we can call it a wrap. And Hala Madrid, people.
Hala Madrid.